I'm going to go over what keeps you from playing physically as an athlete, and then a simple strategy that you can use to play more physically. So right now, what's holding you back from playing physically? Is it due to fear? That's one of the main reasons that I see a lot of the athletes that I work with in one-on-one coaching struggling to play physically. There's a fear of contact, and this fear of contact causes you to avoid contact. But is it really the fear of contact that you're worried about? Most of the time, it's either a fear of getting injured, which is a very real fear, or it's actually a fear of making mistakes. Now, between those two choices, the fear of making mistakes is honestly the one that I see most often, but there is also the fear of getting injured. But I want to focus for a second on this fear of making mistakes. When you are afraid of making a mistake out there, whether it is a 1v1 in soccer, whether it is afraid of contact in hockey, no matter what sport you play, when you are afraid of contact due to a fear of making mistakes, it makes sense that you'll want to avoid these situations because in essence, when you need to play physically, when you are going through contact, it's an opportunity for you to make a mistake, and it's an opportunity for you to fail against somebody else. And that can be a very tough thing to have to deal with as an athlete, especially if you have this overarching fear of making mistakes. Now, the second reason that you might be holding yourself back and not playing as physically as you would like is anxiety and worry that's driven by this fear. And when you have this worry, when you have this anxiety, it actually leads you to play more timidly and actually freeze whenever you are in these situations. So if you are thinking about fear, right, and we think, okay, I'm afraid of making mistakes or I'm afraid of getting injured. Well, once you have that fear, that plants the seed for worry. So then what can happen is you start to worry about not getting injured. You start to worry about not wanting to make mistakes because you don't want coach to yell at you. You don't want to get benched. You don't want to let your teammates down. And whenever you find yourself playing with this type of worry and also this type of anxiety as a player, you'll tend to avoid, once again, just like I was saying with the fear. But you'll also play timidly and also play tentatively because now you're trying to avoid, right? You're trying to not make any mistakes and you're worried about that, to where you don't allow yourself just to play freely, go through that contact. If you're playing basketball, you keep yourself from just driving to the basket and finishing through contact because you're so worried and you end up hesitating. Now, the last cause of this, not playing as physically as you would like tends to be this overarching idea of trying too hard to play perfectly. Now, that word that I said just a few seconds ago, hesitating, that's something I see a lot when athletes are trying too hard to play perfectly. So a story that kind of shows this, or a nice example, is a basketball player that I worked with who played down low. He's very tall for his age. And when we began working together, he was hesitating a lot to put the ball back up after he got a rebound, or if he got the ball down low, he would hesitate a lot. The reason that he was hesitating was because he was trying to find the perfect shot, or he was trying to find the perfect pass. When you are trying to find, the perfect pass or the perfect shot, quote unquote, what this does is it causes you to second guess. Now, for him, he would have a good opportunity to go through contact, put the ball back up after an offensive rebound. But in that moment of hesitation, he lost that opportunity. So then if he did try to go back up, he wasn't as successful as he would like, which then reinforced this fear that he had of making mistakes and wanting to be too perfect because he wasn't playing well when he did make that decision. But it wasn't because he wasn't able to play well. It was because the decision happened too late and he was hesitating. So then more defenders came on him and so he lost that opportunity. But also, if he would end up passing the ball off, maybe his teammates would, lose the ball, or maybe they would find another better shot. But the truth is, when he and I were working on trying to get him to play more aggressively, to be more physical when he played, we had to first take a look at this idea of him trying to be too perfect with his passes, with his shot selection, and how that idea of trying to be too perfect fed into this fear of making mistakes, fed into this worry, fed into the hesitation, and then caused him to underperform and not play as physically as he would like. So those are the three main reasons that you may be not playing as physically as you would like. The fear of making mistakes or the fear of getting injured, which causes you to avoid. The anxiety and the worry you have about making that mistake, or you have about not wanting to get injured. And then also this idea of trying too hard to play perfect. Now, what can you do about this, right? Because you want to be a physical player. You want to push through contact. You want to play aggressively when you need to. And that's where this strategy comes into play. So the first part of the strategy is you actually want to alter your definition of success. When you have the fear of making mistakes, Is it safe to say that your definition of success is playing close to perfect or making as little mistakes as possible? Well, if that's your definition of success, it makes a lot of sense to us that you'll hold yourself back and you'll be afraid of making mistakes, because if you make a couple mistakes, it means you played badly. Now, I get it. The truth is, if you do make a ton of mistakes out there, you'll end up playing badly, and that's not anything we can cover up. But it's the fear of these mistakes where we find you holding yourself back and actually underperforming. If you're not afraid of making mistakes, most of the time you play more aggressively, you play more freely, and you make less mistakes than you do if you are afraid of making mistakes. So how can we alter this definition? Well, the best strategy that I've found, and the one I've seen the most success with in athletes I've worked with in one-on-one coaching, is altering your definition of success from making no mistakes to giving full effort. It's a super, super simple idea, right? But if you go out there and you focus on giving full effort, playing my hardest today, giving 100%, then it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. All that matters is you play aggressively. You go 100%. An example of this comes from a young hockey player that I worked with. And when he and I were beginning to work together, he was struggling with the fear of making mistakes, and he wasn't playing as aggressively or as confidently and physically as he would like. And so the simple shift that we made was we took his attention off of playing perfectly and we put it on to playing aggressively, giving full effort. And a really, really simple idea I had with him, or I shared with him, was this idea of setting an energy bar or an effort bar. And you say, okay, at the beginning of the game, this is my goal for how much energy I want to have left at the end of the game. We would do this on a scale of 0 to 100. And so he would set the goal of maybe 25. He wants to get that energy down to a 25. And then at the end of the game, he would have to go back and he would have to honestly say, what did I do in terms of my energy? Was I actually down to a 25? Was I still at about a 35? Or did I get it all the way down to a 10 or to a 0? This simple exercise really helps us get clear on, this is my goal. My goal is to get a certain amount of effort, or to give a certain amount of effort during the game. And then I want to go back and I want to hold myself accountable. I want to see, how much effort did I really give in the game? Did I give as much effort as I needed to, or did I continue to hold myself back? And when you make this switch, when you focus more on giving effort instead of not making any mistakes, what you'll see happen is you'll see yourself stop focusing and worrying so much about what will happen, and you'll focus more on what is happening right now, and specifically, how can I give full effort right now in the game? And if you give full effort, you can't be avoiding contact. You can't be not playing physically. If you are avoiding contact and not playing physically, by the very nature of it, you're not giving full effort. So right there, we can also see this help with this idea of playing more physically. Now, the second tool that you can use is visualization. And this is a tool that I've used a lot with a lot of different athletes, but one that I use with this one soccer player that really stands out to me, because he was struggling with playing physically, especially on 1v1s and balls in the air where he had to go up for a header and it was going against another guy, and he felt a lot of fear with this. So what he did was he visualized himself in that situation over and over and over again. Now, in the beginning, when he began to visualize this, he felt very uncomfortable. He felt very scared, in all honesty, right? He could feel that nervous tension that he normally feels in that moment. So what I always had him do first was really get himself nice and relaxed, and then just visualize himself over and over again in these situations where he's afraid of contact, but he would visualize himself performing well, going through that contact, playing physically. Now, as he did this, what ended up happening was he started to build his confidence in himself to play physically. So then he began playing a little bit more physically in games. And this is where I see visualization really help. Because in the beginning, visualization works to start building that confidence and the belief in yourself that you can go out there and you can perform the skill that you are visualizing. But then once that belief grows, once that confidence grows, you'll actually start seeing yourself do it more in real life. So then that feeds back into this belief. When we pair this visualization with actually doing it more in real life, we start to see the trust you have in yourself grow. So for yourself, if you are struggling right now with playing physically, identify what specific situations in games are you struggling, and then visualize those situations every single day. And keep up with this over an extended period of time, and that can build this confidence and trust you have in yourself to play physically in those moments. Now, the third tool that you can use is you want to make sure that you are seeing progress. Something that can be really tough whenever we're wanting to make progress as an athlete, and especially in terms of the mental game, but in terms of any aspect of your game, is feeling like you need to go from where you are right now to this incredibly just high ideal goal of where you want to be. The truth is, progress doesn't happen like that. Progress is incremental. It happens over time. And if you fail to see those small improvements that you're making along the way, you always feel like you aren't good enough. And when we're wanting to play more physically, we have to build this belief. We have to build this feeling of confidence and trust in order to start playing more aggressively, start playing more physically. Because if you always feel like you aren't good enough, that feeds into this timidness. And so you'll continue to see yourself avoid these situations. So what you can do in terms of an actionable exercise is you can start looking at the progress that you're making, right? You can start focusing on progress you're making every day, so seeing some wins and some successes that you have on a daily basis. Or you can see this more on a weekly basis. And at the end of each week, choose a day, choose Saturday, Sunday, maybe Friday, and outline what are some of the wins that you had this week? What are some of the successes that you had? What is the progress that you made this week? Now, this doesn't mean that you're wanting to lie to yourself. You never want to lie to yourself about your progress. But you also don't want to lie to yourself about your lack of progress, because you are making progress once you start playing a little bit more physically. Right? If you try to go in for that 1v1 just a little bit more today and then you hesitate, that is progress, because before you weren't even trying at all. Right? If you try to drive to the basket, push through contact, and you get blocked, that is progress, because you actually got yourself to start driving to the basket. It is crucial, as you're wanting to improve your ability to play physically, that you see the progress you are making along the way. And then the last tool that you can use is to actually play smart. Now, this one's a little bit different than the previous three. So the previous three focused more on how to get you to play more physically. But in all honesty, you don't always need to play physically, right? The soccer player that I was mentioning earlier, who I used visualization with, another idea that he and I actually talked about was this idea of playing smarter. You don't need to always play physically if you don't need to. Sometimes you want to play smarter than you want to play physically, because if you can play smarter, you can leverage the skills that you already have without having to push through contact at times. Now, we have to be very careful here, because it's easy for us to rationalize not playing physically due to fear, because we're telling ourselves, oh, I'm just trying to play smart. I'm avoiding contact because that's a smart thing to do. I want this to be a tool for you. I want this to be something that you use, this idea of playing smart. I don't want it to be the only option for you. It's the only option if you're afraid of playing through contact. But if you have trust in yourself and you can play through contact, you can play physically, if you can then add on this idea of playing smart, it can take some of the pressure off of yourself of feeling like you always have to play physically, which makes it easier to push through contact when you need to play physically. So how you play smart is you think, can I use my mind in this situation to free myself from having to push through contact? The soccer player example was that he was using his positioning a little bit better to beat guys in 1v1s instead of feeling like he had to take them head on and push through contact or battle through contact. He would focus on his angles when he was going for a tackle instead of just trying to go head on and, steal the ball from the guy. So for yourself, depending on your sport, are there situations where you are trying to be more physical right now, where you could actually play smarter? There are things that you could do, positioning things that you could do, aspects of your game you could think through a little bit more that would give you an advantage in that moment, instead of just trying to feel like I have to be aggressive right now, I have to play physically. You can play physically, you want to play physically, but you could also play smart if that's an option for you. So that's a simple strategy that you can use to play more physically as an athlete. If you have any questions about this video, or you would like me to make any other video, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.